Cheating in high school has got to be one of the most adrenaline-inducing experiences ever. Do you remember making eye contact with the teacher after glancing at someone else's test? These are the 7 levels of cheating in high school. The first level of cheating in school, we start at the basics, homework. There are 2 different ways how you could cheat on homework, by copying off your friends, finding the answer key, but everyone's done that. The next way people cheat on their homework is by using this big brain strategy of simply just making it up. In my English class, we had to turn in 3 book reports per month, and at the start of the year, I was like, I'm not doing that. So when our English teacher was collecting our first reports the next month, I saw something really interesting. Whenever she called us up to turn them in, it didn't appear as if she was reading them at all. What she was doing was simply reading the first 3 to 4 sentences of the first page, and did the same for the next pages, and then gave you a grade. So the thought came to me, what if I were to write fake book reports? The next month I made 3 fake book reports, and it went well, as our English teacher never questioned anything and did the same moving forward. All was good until a friend of mine, Marcus, who after learning what I knew, decided that he was going to do the same thing, without the realism. And in our next book report turn-in, no lie, his report he handed in stated his book was 800 pages, and everyone looked at him like, really? And I was like, no, you ruined my plan. But our English teacher was too lazy and just gave him an A anyway. Level 2 is a bit more tricky than the previous level. That's because we're right in front of the teacher at school, classwork cheating. And there's a few different ways how you could cheat in the classroom. The first being copying off the person next to you, which I believe has to be the most common of them all, and it becomes a canon event if you're paired up with a smart kid or especially a nerd, as you're being carried most of the time in some of the worst classes ever conceived. But the other times, you're not so lucky, and while you're trying to copy with your friends, but your teacher sees you doing this and tries to stop you and threaten you with a 0 and a phone call home. The next way that someone could cheat in the classroom is a pretty sneaky one. In our Spanish class every morning, we would receive the daily class worksheet that contained questions we were supposed to solve in that day's lesson. One day in the middle of one of my teacher's lectures, an intrusive thought came to my mind. What if I were to look up these questions online? And while the teacher wasn't looking, I quickly began to type in my phone, looking for the answer. And on the first results, I didn't just find the answer to the question I was searching, but I found the whole worksheet answer key, as our teacher was just copying questions herself from the internet. Thank you, internet, you saved my life. The teachers know that we don't care about grade integrity as much as they do, so they attempt to prevent cheating with this highly flawed method in level 3, which is known as peer review grading. And for most of the time, whenever you have to peer review, you usually try to give it to one of your friends. And even if you're just on good terms with that person, what ends up happening is that if the person you're grading ends up getting the wrong answer, you simply just change it to the right one, and everyone's just rocking with 10 out of 10. When I was a freshman in my 9th grade living environment class, in the middle of one of our quizzes, I never got to finish the last question, and a guy we'll call Kurt, who was a senior at the time, who was taking this class now because our school decided to give him our science classes in reverse, while grading my paper, gave me the answer with a complete 5 out of 5 on my quiz. Kurt, if you're out there, remember you're goated for that. But other times, you don't get kids like Kurt, but the kids like Chester instead. And we all know Chester. As soon as the teacher tells the answer, his hand immediately goes up asking, what if the person put that? And not just for the first, but every question, putting you on blast and ensuring you that you get your 2 out of 5 on your quiz. Thank you, Chester. That was really needed. But this next level, level 4, is wild, and I was pretty good at this one. The false turn-ins. If you don't know what this level is, it's when you don't do your work, and then when the teacher comes to collect it and asks if you did it, but instead of saying no, you end up saying that you did, and somehow they believe you and give you a great grade instead. And you might be saying, there's no way that could ever work, and you'd be shocked with the amount of times me and my friends accidentally got away with doing this. There are 2 great examples. The first was my drama class presentation, where me and my friend Marcus from earlier were supposed to give a speech to the class, but the problem was that we never did it. And when it came time to present, the other kids began gassing up the teacher saying that we already had went, and the teacher believed them. The definition of clutch. The next one was in our science class. Again, me and Marcus, along with a third friend we'll call Caleb. This time it was for our ChainsFR presentations. What we ended up doing was hiding all of our projects under our teacher's desk, and then luckily our class took 3 periods to get through their presentations, and we never got a chance to present since we went on spring break right after. And when we came back, presentations were over, and we ended up walking away with an over 80% for a presentation we never did. But this next one, the most difficult in my opinion, that we've all tried to do. At level 5, we have test copying, and there are many methods, ways kids try to cheat during tests. First, we have the most common, the desk glance. When you're sitting at your desk while taking the test, and you're just stumped over this one question, so you try to take a quick peek at another person's test to get the answer, and this gives mixed results. On one hand, it could be the class nerd, and if you somehow got their answers, you're golden, no need to worry. But if not, then your faith is given to the worst possible thing to ever exist. Real life RNG. And if this is you, I feel bad for you. But what we haven't mentioned in the first reason is when you're looking around in the classroom for other papers, when your eyes make eye contact with the teachers. So now you have to pretend as if you're simply thinking in order not to bring any attention to yourself. The next method is a fairly hard one to get right, and that is the code method. And what I've seen personally during some tests, some of y'all should not do this method, as there's usually a group of students and they all speak in code trying to tell each other the answers. One group during a history test I had tried it and were confident that they all got A's, but ended up getting 67s, barely passing at the end. It's honestly better just to use the desk glance method instead. But going from the hardest method to the easiest method, we have what will be a really nostalgic one at level 6, online class. And the reason why it's at level 6 and not level 1, because it incorporates everything that came before it and turned it on maximum overdrive, as there were quite literally an infinite amount of possibilities to cheat. One example was that everyone, and I do mean everyone, had made group chats on Discord or Instagram or wherever to tackle homeworks, classworks, even big tests. And the wild thing is, this was the only time in history, and for the foreseeable future, that the teachers cannot do not one thing about it, as their methods in stopping kids from cheating that I've seen were just pointless. Having your camera on for an example while you're taking a quiz, what if I just angle my camera in front of me so you could only see my head, and then put a decoy phone right next to me? What if your camera can't turn on? It happened to me in one of my pre-algebra classes, so the teacher just says screw it and makes you take the test anyway. What if they were to monitor if you were changing tabs during a test? Just use another device to look up the answers. And all tests are now open book, since you could have notes with you at all times. And the list goes on with the amount of stuff you'd be able to do. Truly a time to be alive if you were going to school. But this next level, this takes everything that we've done before, from copying off others to falsifying book reports to even the methods of copying people's tests, and straight up invalidates them, making them look like child's play, as this is fairly new, as it took Steam starting this year, as you don't even need people anymore. At level 7 we have AI. Now we already had the internet, and that was already a game changer of getting to copy a question, paste it into Google, and then having a pretty good chance at finding an answer. But with AI, things just get ridiculous, as it would have taken you maybe a quarter of the time to try to find the answers online for the work you were doing. The wildest thing I've seen with AI, once you put your questions in, it only takes less than 30 seconds, if the program is high enough quality, to give you a completed paper. And I tried this out with one of my English essays we were tasked to do, and what took me 5 days to completely write out. When I put it in ChatGPT after I finished writing it, it took the program less than a minute to do what it took me nearly a week to make. And programs like this will only get better as the time goes on. So at that point in the future, programs like ChatGPT and others may be treated like cool math games and may be blocked from school internet. But that day isn't today. What cheating stories do you have in school, and what do you like to see next? Consider leaving a like and subscribing if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time in the sanctuary.